She sends baby's prescription to Mafia boss by mistake. Minutes later, he says, "Doctor's coming." Audrey's heart stopped as she realized what she'd done. The prescription for her 6-month-old son's bronchial medication had been accidentally sent to a Boston crime lord instead of Dr. Wilson. Her trembling fingers hovered over the keyboard as she desperately tried to recall the email. But it was too late. The dreaded delivered notification mocked her from the screen. The wrong attachment containing her address, phone number, and Jeremy's medical records had landed in the inbox of someone called Wesley Porter. Cold sweat formed on her brow as panic set in. As a single mother barely making ends meet as a part-time nanny, this mistake could cost her everything. She'd heard whispers about Porter's ruthless reputation throughout the city's affluent neighborhoods where she worked. Jeremy's labored breathing from the nursery snapped her back to reality. His medication had run out yesterday, and without insurance, the refill would cost 3 weeks of groceries. She had been emailing the free clinic begging for assistance when autocomplete betrayed her. Her phone suddenly buzzed on the kitchen table, displaying an unknown number. Audrey stared at it, frozen in terror, as if the device itself might explode. On the 5th ring, she finally answered with a shaking voice. Hello? Ms. Audrey Pearson? The male voice was calm, deep, and terrifyingly precise. "I believe you sent me something intended for someone else. An interesting mistake." There was a pause that seemed to last forever. "A doctor will arrive at your apartment in 20 minutes. Audrey collapsed into a chair, confusion replacing her fear. "Doctor? I don't understand. Who is this?" But the line had already gone dead. She rushed to lock the door, then hesitated. If this mysterious caller wanted to harm her, a deadbolt wouldn't stop him. Exactly 19 minutes later, a soft knock echoed through her tiny apartment. Through the peephole, she saw an elderly man in a white coat holding a medical bag. Behind him stood a mountain of a man in an expensive suit, expression unreadable, arms crossed over his chest. With Jeremy's wheezing growing worse and few options left, Audrey made a decision that would change everything. She opened the door, clutching her son protectively to her chest, and faced whatever consequences her simple email error had set in motion. The doctor entered with a gentle smile, immediately focusing on Jeremy. "Let's have a look at this little fellow, shall we?" His hands were warm and confident as he examined the baby, while the suited man remained in the doorway, eyes scanning the shabby apartment. "I'm Dr. Faulkner, Ms. Pearson. Your son has significant bronchial inflammation, but this should help." He produced a small nebulizer and medication from his bag, far more advanced than anything the free clinic had offered. "I'll show you how to administer it properly." Audrey's suspicion fought with her relief as the doctor efficiently treated Jeremy, whose breathing eased within minutes. "I don't understand why you're helping us," she finally said, looking not at the doctor, but at the imposing figure still watching from the doorway. "Consider it a professional courtesy," the suited man finally spoke, his voice matching the one from the phone. "Mr. Porter believes in addressing misdirected communications personally." A business card appeared between his fingers. "He'd like to meet tomorrow, noon, this address." Audrey's fingers closed around the heavy cardstock bearing only an address in Boston's exclusive Beacon Hill neighborhood. "And if I refuse?" she asked, surprised by her own boldness as Jeremy slept peacefully in her arms for the first time in days. "Then you refuse," he replied with a slight shrug that somehow felt more threatening than reassuring. "But the medication, doctor." Faulkner left will last only 3 days. "Good evening, Ms. Pearson." Both men departed, leaving Audrey with a sleeping baby and a decision that felt impossible. Beacon Hill loomed before her like a fortress from another century, elegant brownstones guarded by wrought iron and old money. Audrey adjusted Jeremy in his carrier, smoothed her only presentable dress, and approached the address with her heart hammering against her ribs. The door opened before she could knock, revealing a slender woman with sharp eyes and a sharper suit. "Ms. Pearson, follow me." No introduction, no pleasantries. The interior of the home contrasted with its historic exterior, sleek, modern, and cold as a vault. She was led through corridors adorned with artwork worth more than she'd earn in a lifetime. Past rooms where men in expensive suits glanced up from laptops and conversations, their eyes assessing and dismissing her in the same moment. Jeremy stirred against her chest. "Wait here." The woman gestured to a chair outside massive double doors, before disappearing through them. Audrey sat stiffly, ears straining to catch the murmured conversation beyond. A minute later, the doors swung open. "Mr. Porter will see you now." The office was a study in minimalist power, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Boston Harbor, a desk of polished concrete, and behind it, a man far younger than she had expected. Wesley Porter couldn't be more than 30, his sharp features set in an expression of practiced neutrality. Ms. Pearson. He didn't stand, didn't offer his hand. His eyes flicked briefly to Jeremy, then back to her face. Your email contained sensitive personal information that could be quite valuable in the wrong hands. I'm curious why a nanny would have my private address. Audrey swallowed hard. It was a mistake. Autocomplete. I was trying to email Dr. Wilson about Jeremy's prescription. She forced herself to meet his gaze, fighting the urge to shrink under his scrutiny. Thank you for sending the doctor instead of something else. Wesley's fingers tapped once on the concrete surface. Children shouldn't suffer for their parents' mistakes. For a moment, something flickered behind his cold expression. Gone so quickly, Audrey wondered if she'd imagined it. I've taken the liberty of having Dr. Faulkner transferred to your case permanently. Audrey's suspicion flared. Why would you do that? What do you want from me? The question hung in the air, her survival instincts screaming that nothing came without a price in Wesley Porter's world. Jeremy began to fuss, sensing her tension. Consider it an investment. Wesley's eyes followed her movements as she gently rocked Jeremy. Your employment situation is precarious. The families you work for, the Harringtons, the Montgomerys, are business associates. I prefer my associates' households to run smoothly. Disbelief warred with indignation in Audrey's chest. So I'm what? A business expense? A tax write-off for your criminal empire? The words escaped before she could stop them, hanging dangerously in the air between them as she immediately regretted her boldness. To her surprise, Wesley's mouth quirked slightly upward. Criminal empire? You've been watching too many films, Ms. Pearson. He stood in one fluid motion, buttoning his impeccable suit jacket. You've been struggling since Jeremy was born. Boston Children's Hospital has better specialists. I could never afford, Audrey began, but Wesley cut her off with a slight wave of his hand, circling his desk to stand before her. Up close, she noticed the faint shadows beneath his eyes, the tension in his jaw at odds with his controlled demeanor. It's arranged. Weekly appointments, starting tomorrow. My driver will collect you. It wasn't an offer, but a statement of fact. In exchange, I may occasionally require information about the households you serve. Nothing that would harm anyone, merely business intelligence. You want me to spy for you? Audrey clutched Jeremy tighter, rising to her feet despite feeling dwarfed by Wesley's height. I won't do anything illegal. I won't put my son at risk. She expected anger, threats, not the faint flash of respect that crossed his features. 3 weeks passed in a surreal new routine. Dr. Faulkner's treatments were working miracles for Jeremy, whose color improved and breathing stabilized. Twice weekly, Wesley's silent driver delivered them to Boston Children's Hospital in a vehicle that cost more than her lifetime earnings. Wesley himself remained a mystery, appearing occasionally in hospital corridors like a specter in bespoke suits, observing from a distance before disappearing again. He never approached, never spoke, yet his presence lingered like a shadow over her newfound security. He lost someone, Dr. Faulkner remarked casually during one of Jeremy's treatments, his eyes watching Audrey's reaction carefully. A younger brother, respiratory failure. Emergency services couldn't reach them in time because of a snowstorm. He was 8, Mr. Porter was 12. Audrey absorbed this information with a strange twist in her chest, suddenly seeing Wesley's clinical interest in her son's treatment through a different lens. That doesn't excuse whatever he does now, she replied, though the conviction in her voice wavered slightly. The following Monday, her employer, Mrs. Montgomery, mentioned a charity gala that evening. Such a headache. All these Boston elites pretending they care about children's health care while networking for their next yacht purchase. She sighed dramatically, checking her diamond watch. Will the Porters be there? Audrey asked, trying to sound casual as she folded laundry. Mrs. Montgomery's eyebrows shot up in surprise before her expression shifted to something calculating. Wesley Porter? Yes, he always attends, donates obscene amounts. Why do you ask? That evening, after returning to her apartment, Audrey found a package leaning against her door. Inside, an emerald evening gown that somehow fit perfectly, alongside an embossed invitation to the very gala Mrs. Montgomery had mentioned. A handwritten note read simply, "If you're curious, 8 p.m. Standing in the grand ballroom of the Fairmont Copley Plaza, Audrey felt like an imposter in a world of wealth and influence. She clutched a sparkling water, the babysitter's number programmed into her phone for emergencies, scanning the crowd for the only face she knew. You came, Wesley appeared beside her suddenly, his voice betraying the faintest hint of surprise. Up close, in the warm lighting of the ballroom, he seemed almost human. The sharp edges of his daytime persona softened ever so slightly. "The dress suits you." "I wanted to understand why," Audrey replied honestly, watching couples twirl across the dance floor, diamonds catching light like stars. "Why help a random woman who accidentally emailed you? Why arrange the best medical care for a child you've never even held?" Wesley's eyes darkened momentarily before he gestured toward a quieter corner of the ballroom. "Sometimes mistakes lead us exactly where we need to be. My brother Ethan's death taught me the price of being unreachable, of systems that fail those who need them most." As they spoke, pieces of Wesley Porter emerged from behind the calculated facade. A boy who'd watched his brother struggle for breath on a stormy night. A teenager who'd vowed never to be powerless again. A man whose empire was built partly on legitimate medical technology investments. "That doesn't explain why you're helping us specifically," Audrey pressed, sensing there was more he wasn't saying. Wesley studied her for a long moment, his expression unreadable in the dimmed lighting, the distant music providing a soundtrack to their standoff. "Perhaps I recognize something in your email, the desperation of someone who would do anything to save her child." His voice dropped lower, meant only for her ears. "Or perhaps I'm simply tired of building walls that keep everyone at a distance. Either way, Ms. Pearson, here we are." Audrey felt a shift in the air between them, something undefined, yet undeniably significant. "My friends call me Audrey," she offered, surprising herself with the implicit invitation in those words. Wesley's carefully controlled expression wavered for just a moment. "I haven't had friends in a long time," Wesley admitted, as they stood on the balcony overlooking Boston's glittering skyline. The April breeze carried the scent of new beginnings, rustling through Audrey's carefully styled hair. "My position doesn't allow for many genuine connections." Audrey watched his profile, noticing how he subtly scanned every entrance, exit, and person who passed too close. "That sounds lonely," she said simply, without pity or judgment. "Jeremy is the only real connection I have too. Everyone else just sees a struggling single mother." Their conversation was interrupted by a commotion inside. Mrs. Montgomery, champagne glass in hand, approaching with a cluster of Boston's elite. "Wesley, there you are. And, Audrey?" Her employer's voice shifted from silky to sharp in an instant. "What are you doing here?" "Ms. Pearson is my guest," Wesley stated, his tone returning to that cool authority that brooked no argument. The transformation was immediate and complete, the glimpse of humanity tucked away behind his carefully constructed facade. "She's consulting on a children's healthcare initiative." Mrs. Montgomery's skeptical gaze darted between them, calculation visible behind her social smile. "How charitable of you." The word dripped with insinuation as she rejoined her husband, whispering furiously. Audrey felt the weight of curious stares from across the ballroom. The next morning, Audrey was fired. "It's inappropriate to fraternize with our business associates," Mrs. Montgomery explained with a thin smile, handing her a final paycheck. "We require someone who understands professional boundaries. You have until the end of the week to find another position." Wesley's reaction was swift and cold. "You'll be compensated for twice your salary until you find suitable employment," he stated when she called him, his voice betraying no emotion. "And Jeremy's treatments will continue regardless. This is non-negotiable." "I don't want your money," Audrey insisted, pride flaring despite her precarious situation. "I need to stand on my own feet. I've been doing it since Jeremy's father walked out when he learned I was pregnant." The admission escaped before she could stop it. Vulnerability she rarely showed. An unexpected silence followed, before Wesley spoke again, his voice different somehow. "I understand pride, Audrey, but sometimes accepting help isn't weakness. It's strategy." A pause. "My mother refused assistance after my father abandoned us. That stubbornness almost cost Ethan his life before the storm did. 3 days later, Audrey received a call from Boston Children's Hospital, offering her a position in patient family services. Your experience as a mother with a chronically ill child makes you uniquely qualified," the administrator explained. The recommendation from Dr. Faulkner was quite compelling. She accepted the position knowing full well who had orchestrated it, feelings conflicted between gratitude and wariness. The job was perfect. Decent salary, flexible hours accommodating Jeremy's medical needs, and work that actually meant something. Wesley's invisible hand both comforted and concerned her. Weeks passed as spring bloomed across Boston. Jeremy's health improved dramatically under the specialized care. while Audrey found purpose in guiding other frightened parents through the medical maze she'd navigated herself. Wesley remained a peripheral presence, checking in with brief texts or appearing momentarily at the hospital. Their orbits gradually pulled closer, despite Audrey's lingering reservations. Coffee in the hospital cafeteria became dinner at quiet restaurants, conversations extending beyond Jeremy's health to books they'd read, places they'd seen, dreams deferred by circumstance. Wesley listened with an intensity few had ever shown her. One rainy evening, as thunder rattled the windows of her apartment, Jeremy woke screaming from a nightmare. Before she could fully calm him, a knock at the door revealed Wesley, soaked from the storm, concern etched across features usually kept carefully blank. "I was nearby. Is he all right?" The lie was transparent. His Beacon Hill home was across the city. Yet something shifted as Audrey let him in and watched this powerful man awkwardly hold out a finger for Jeremy to grasp, the baby's cries subsiding as he studied this new person with wide, curious eyes. "He likes you," Audrey observed with surprise as Jeremy babbled contentedly in Wesley's hesitant arms. The storm raged outside while inside, boundaries carefully maintained for months began dissolving in the warm light of her small living room. "He doesn't usually warm to strangers so quickly." Wesley's carefully constructed mask slipped further as he gently bounced the baby, muscle memory from a childhood spent caring for his brother. "Children are excellent judges of character," he replied softly, though his assessment might be more generous than deserved. Their peaceful moment shattered with Wesley's phone vibrating insistently. His expression darkened as he read the message, passing Jeremy back to Audrey with careful precision. "I have to go. Business matter." The walls between them reconstructed in seconds, his voice reverting to clipped professionalism. Throughout the following week, Wesley vanished completely. No texts, no calls, no appearances at the hospital. Dr. Faulkner continued Jeremy's treatments but deflected Audrey's questions with practiced ease. The absence felt strangely hollow after months of his steady presence. On the 8th day, Audrey found a black SUV waiting outside the hospital as her shift ended. The driver, Burke, she'd learned his name over time, held the door without speaking. "Where are we going?" she asked, hesitating with Jeremy's carrier clutched protectively. "Is Wesley all right? Mr. Porter requests your presence, ma'am." Burke's expression revealed nothing, but the faint urgency in his tone prompted Audrey to enter the vehicle. They drove not to Beacon Hill, but to a secluded waterfront property in Marblehead, modern architecture perched dramatically on coastal rocks. Security personnel nodded respectfully as Burke escorted them inside the fortress-like home. Through floor-to-ceiling windows, angry Atlantic waves crashed against the cliffs below, mirroring the storm Audrey sensed brewing within these walls. "Wait here. He'll be with you shortly." Wesley appeared 15 minutes later looking unlike she'd ever seen him. Tie loosened, sleeve cuffs unbuttoned, a faint bruise coloring his jawline. "I apologize for the abrupt invitation," he began formally, but Audrey cut him off, stepping forward to examine the injury with concern. "What happened?" she asked directly, medical training overriding her hesitation. Wesley tensed at her proximity before unexpectedly relaxing, allowing her fingers to gently probe the bruise. "Business disagreement. Nothing unusual." The practiced dismissal couldn't mask the weariness in his voice. "You disappeared for a week because of a business disagreement?" Audrey challenged, settling Jeremy on a plush sofa surrounded by pillows. "I was worried." The admission hung between them, more revealing than she'd intended. Wesley's carefully maintained control faltered momentarily. "Worried is appropriate," he finally conceded, moving to pour a drink from a crystal decanter. "Some former associates are disputing a recent business acquisition. They've expressed their disapproval, colorfully." He gestured vaguely toward his bruised face. "They've also been making inquiries about you and Jeremy." Cold fear washed through Audrey as she instinctively moved closer to her son. "What kind of inquiries?" Her voice remained steady, despite the panic building in her chest. "Why would anyone care about us?" Jeremy babbled happily, blissfully unaware of the tension suffusing the room. Wesley's expression hardened into something dangerous as he set down his untouched drink. "Because they believe you matter to me, and in their world, that makes you leverage." He approached slowly, keeping a respectful distance. "I brought you here because this property is secure. You'll stay until the situation resolves." "You can't just decide that," Audrey protested, though the fear for Jeremy tempered her indignation. "My job, our apartment." Wesley cut her off with a gentle but firm shake of his head. "Already handled." The hospital believes you're taking personal leave. Your belongings are being packed as we speak. How long? Audrey asked after a tense silence, recognizing the gravity behind Wesley's controlled demeanor. Something in his world had shifted dramatically, and she sensed arguing would be both futile and potentially dangerous. Not from him, but from whatever threat had driven him to these measures. 3 days, perhaps a week. Wesley's answer was clipped, professional, as if discussing a business transaction rather than their lives. My security team will remain with you at all times. The staff has prepared rooms for you and Jeremy upstairs. He moved toward the door, already retreating emotionally. That's it? You uproot us without warning. Tell me some vague threat exists. Then just leave? Audrey's voice rose despite her best efforts to remain calm. If we're in danger because of our connection to you, don't we deserve the full truth about what that means? Wesley paused, conflict visible in the tense line of his shoulders before he turned back. The truth is complicated, Audrey. My business operates in gray areas, legal structures with occasionally illegal methods. I've been systematically dismantling certain operations that crossed ethical lines. Criminal operations, she clarified, needing the honesty between them. Wesley didn't flinch from her direct gaze. Yes, inherited from my predecessor along with the legitimate businesses. The transition hasn't been smooth, particularly with a faction led by someone called Harlan. Jeremy began fussing, sensing the tension in the room. Audrey lifted him automatically, the soothing motion of rocking her son grounding her as she processed Wesley's words. So we're collateral damage in your corporate power struggle. The statement carried no judgment, merely assessment. No. The single word emerged with such force that both Audrey and Jeremy startled. Wesley crossed the room in 3 quick strides, stopping just short of touching them. You are why I'm accelerating these changes. Meeting you, seeing Jeremy, it clarified certain priorities. The confession hung between them, transforming the air in the room to something electric and uncertain. I never intended to involve you in this world, Wesley continued, his carefully maintained control slipping to reveal something raw underneath. But I can't seem to stay away from either of you. Audrey felt her heartbeat accelerate, Jeremy warm and solid against her chest as an anchor in this storm. I don't need protection from the truth, she said finally. Whatever is happening, whatever decisions you're making, I deserve to understand the risks I'm facing because of them. Wesley studied her with that intense focus she'd come to recognize, weighing options, calculating risks. Come with me. He led them to his office, a sleek space dominated by monitors displaying security feeds from around the property. With a few keystrokes, a series of documents appeared on the main screen. I've been systematically transferring business holdings to legitimate operations, he explained, scrolling through financial records and legal documents. The medical technology investments have been particularly successful. Boston Children's Hospital's new respiratory research wing, that's Porter money laundering itself clean. Audrey absorbed this information, understanding dawning slowly. You're getting out of the family business. The realization was both shocking and somehow inevitable. That's why someone hurt you. They don't want things to change. Jeremy reached for the colorful graphs on screen, oblivious to their significance. The old guard believes strength comes from fear, from controlling people through their weaknesses. Wesley's voice had taken on an educational tone, as if discussing business theory rather than criminal enterprises. I've learned that real power comes from healing those weaknesses instead. A soft ping from one of the monitors interrupted them. Wesley's expression shifted instantly to alert focus as he typed rapidly, security camera feeds cycling through different areas of the property. Burke, he spoke into an intercom. Protocol Omega, East Perimeter breach. 3 minutes. What's happening? Audrey clutched Jeremy tighter as Wesley moved to a painting on the wall, revealing a hidden safe. He withdrew a handgun with practiced efficiency, checking it before securing it in a shoulder holster beneath his jacket. Wesley, you're scaring me. What is Protocol Omega? It's a security measure. He approached them calmly, though the tension in his movements betrayed the urgency of the situation. Harlan's men have found us more quickly than anticipated. Burke will take you and Jeremy to a secure location while I handle this. It's a precaution, nothing more. The door opened to reveal Burke and 2 other security team members, expressions grim and professional. Safe room is prepped, sir. Car standing by at the tunnel exit if needed. Burke extended his hands toward Audrey. Ms. Pearson, please come with us immediately. Time is limited. Audrey instinctively stepped back, one protective arm around Jeremy. I'm not going anywhere until someone explains exactly what's happening, she insisted, fear crystallizing into determination. Who is coming here? What do they want? And why do you need that gun if it's just a precaution? They want leverage against me, Wesley answered with stark honesty, glancing at the security feeds where dark figures now approach the property perimeter. And they believe you and Jeremy are that leverage. They're not entirely wrong. The admission cost him visibly, vulnerability breaking through his carefully constructed walls. A thunderous crash from outside made the decision for them. Go, Wesley commanded, his voice leaving no room for argument as he handed Audrey a secure satellite phone. If anything happens to me, press the red button. It connects directly to my attorney. He has instructions. Burke swept Jeremy from Audrey's arms with surprising gentleness, leading them through a hidden door behind the bookcase. The passageway was narrow but well lit, descending deep beneath the cliffside mansion. Mr. Porter has prepared for every contingency, ma'am, Burke assured her. The safe room resembled a luxurious underground apartment, stocked with everything from baby supplies to medical equipment. A wall of monitors displayed camera feeds from throughout the property, where dark figures now moved with military precision. Audrey watched in horror as Wesley confronted them alone. He's going to get himself killed, she whispered, clutching the satellite phone. On screen, Wesley stood in his office, eerily calm as 3 armed men entered. Their leader, presumably Harlan, was older, with the confident posture of someone accustomed to violence. Their conversation was inaudible, but clearly hostile. Tension radiated through the safe room as the silent drama unfolded above. Burke maintained a professional demeanor, but his white-knuckled grip on his weapon betrayed his concern. Mr. Porter has handled worse situations, he offered, though his eyes never left the security feed. Jeremy began crying, his little face reddening with distress at the tense atmosphere. Audrey tried to soothe him while keeping one eye on the monitors, where the confrontation appeared to be escalating. Harlan gestured angrily, while Wesley remained unnaturally still, his back to the camera. A sudden movement, a flash of light, and Wesley crumpled to the floor. Audrey's scream caught in her throat as Burke instantly moved to the communication panel. "Protocol Crimson," he barked into the microphone. "Principal down. Hostile takeover in progress. Activate Contingency 7. What does that mean?" Audrey demanded, clutching Jeremy tightly as alarms blared throughout the hidden bunker. "Is he dead? What happened?" She couldn't tear her eyes from the monitor where Wesley lay motionless, while Harlan's men ransacked the office, clearly searching for something. "Tranquilizer dart, not a bullet," Burke explained, efficiently gathering emergency supplies. "They want information from him. That buys us time, but not much." He pressed a series of buttons on a wall panel, revealing another hidden passage. "This leads to the boat dock. We need to move now." "I'm not leaving him." Audrey's decision crystallized instantly, surprising even herself with its certainty. "You take Jeremy somewhere safe. I'll stay. They don't know about the safe room, and I can help Wesley when they're gone." The maternal ferocity in her voice brooked no argument. Burke's professional mask slipped momentarily, revealing genuine concern. "Ms. Pearson, with all due respect, Mr. Porter would never forgive me if I let anything happen to you. His explicit instructions were to protect you and Jeremy at all costs, including his own life if necessary. And I'll never forgive myself if I run while he's in danger because of us." Audrey handed the crying Jeremy to Burke, whose trained arms automatically adjusted to support the infant. "He needs his medication every 6 hours. There's formula in the diaper bag. Please, keep my son safe." Burke's internal struggle played across his face before military training reasserted itself. 24 hours. If you haven't made contact by then, I activate the final contingency. He showed her how to access the medical supplies, the weapons cache, the emergency exits. "Mr. Porter values you. Don't make his sacrifice meaningless." After Burke disappeared with Jeremy through the escape tunnel, Audrey turned back to the monitors. Above her, Wesley was now conscious but bound to a chair, blood trickling from his temple as Harlan circled him like a predator. Her heart raced as she assessed her options, the hospital training kicking in: triage, stabilize, intervene. Audrey had spent her life being underestimated, by Jeremy's father who abandoned them, by employers who saw only a desperate single mother, by a society that dismissed her struggles. Now that invisibility would become her weapon as she prepared to save the man who had saved her son. For hours, Audrey watched the interrogation unfold, memorizing the guards' rotation patterns while gathering supplies from around the safe room. Wesley revealed nothing despite Harlan's escalating methods, his face remaining impassive even as the questioning turned physical. His endurance was both impressive and horrifying to witness. When darkness fell and the guard count dwindled, Audrey made her move. The ventilation system connecting the safe room to the main house was tight but navigable, designed as an emergency escape route. She crawled through with medical supplies and a small canister Burke had labeled non-lethal deterrent. The house was eerily quiet as she emerged into a darkened hallway closet, her heart pounding so loudly she feared it would give her away. 2 guards remained with Wesley in the office while Harlan had retreated elsewhere to make calls. The timing would need to be perfect. Still protecting that woman and her kid? One guard taunted, visible through the partially open office door. Harlan's men will find them by morning. Should have stayed in your lane, Porter. Kept to the old ways. The boss was grooming you to take over everything, not dismantle it. Wesley's response was too quiet for Audrey to hear, but whatever he said made the guards laugh cruelly. Weakness? That's what happens when you let people matter to you. The guard checked his watch. Harlan will be back in 20 minutes. Last chance to save yourself some pain. The moment the guard stepped into the hallway for his cigarette break, Audrey struck. The canister released a quick-acting sedative gas that dropped him silently to the floor. She dragged him into the closet with strength born of desperation, acquiring his weapon and access card before proceeding to the office. The remaining guard never saw her coming. As he turned at the sound of the door, Audrey deployed the second gas canister directly in his face. He crumpled mid-reach for his weapon, leaving her alone with Wesley, who stared at her with a mixture of disbelief and horror. Blood matted Wesley's hair where Harlan had struck him repeatedly, the controlled businessman facade stripped away to reveal something raw and human beneath. Despite his injuries, his eyes retained that calculating intelligence, quickly assessing their precarious situation as alarms began to sound throughout the compound. Outside, the rain intensified, providing natural cover for their potential escape as security protocols activated throughout the property. The mansion's sophisticated defense systems, designed to keep intruders out, now worked against its owner as lockdown procedures trapped them inside with Harlan's remaining men. Years of maintaining emotional distance had not prepared Wesley for the surge of unfamiliar feelings as Audrey risked everything to save him. The wall he'd carefully constructed since Ethan's death, brick by brick of control, power, and detachment, crumbled in the face of her unexpected courage. "What are you doing here?" he hissed as she rushed to untie him, blood from his split lip staining his once immaculate shirt. "Where's Jeremy? Burke was supposed to get you both out." Despite his injuries, his first concern was clearly for them rather than himself. "Jeremy's safe with Burke," Audrey assured him, working on the restraints while keeping one eye on the door. "I couldn't leave you here." The professional detachment she'd learned at the hospital kept her hands steady, despite the gravity of their situation. "Can you walk?" Wesley tested his weight as she freed his legs, grimacing but nodding. "Harlan will be back soon with more men. He's looking for access to the offshore accounts, the legitimate ones funding the hospital research." His eyes found hers, intense despite the pain clouding them. "Why did you come back, Audrey?" "It wasn't worth the risk." "Because you matter to me," she answered simply, supporting his weight as they moved toward the hidden passage she'd emerged from. "You called it weakness. I call it strength." The honesty between them felt strangely freeing despite the danger surrounding them from all sides. They had barely reached the passageway entrance when voices echoed from the hallway. "Someone's coming," Audrey whispered, helping Wesley into the narrow opening before sliding in herself. They pulled the panel closed just as Harlan's angry voice filled the office, discovering his missing prisoner. The ventilation shaft felt smaller with both of them navigating it, Wesley's injured body making each movement a suppressed groan of pain. "Almost there," Audrey encouraged, hearing the alarm sound above them as their escape was discovered. Just a little further to the safe room. When they finally tumbled into the secure space, Audrey immediately engaged the lockdown protocol Burke had shown her. Steel reinforcements slid into place as she helped Wesley to the medical area, her training taking over as she assessed his injuries with professional efficiency. "Possible concussion, 3 cracked ribs, numerous contusions," she cataloged, cleaning the blood from his face with gentle hands. "Nothing life-threatening, but you need proper medical attention once we're out of here." Wesley watched her work, something unreadable shifting behind his eyes. "You came back for me," Wesley stated again, as if still processing this fact while Audrey dressed his wounds. Above them, security feeds showed Harlan's men tearing the house apart in search of them. "No one has ever come back for me before. Not since Ethan." Audrey's hands paused momentarily on his bruised ribs. "That's the tragedy of walls, Wesley. They don't just keep others out. They lock you in." She administered a mild painkiller, her touch professional yet tender. Everyone deserves someone who comes back for them. Dawn broke over the Atlantic as they huddled in the safe room, the satellite phone clutched in Wesley's bandaged hand. Burke has Jeremy at the contingency location. They're safe, he reported, relief evident in his voice. And Harlan's leverage play has backfired spectacularly. The security feeds showed black SUVs surrounding the property, men in tactical gear securing the perimeter. Not Harlan's people, Wesley explained, noting Audrey's alarm. Mine. Former military specialists I keep on retainer for situations like this. Harlan severely underestimated my contingency planning. Within hours, the property was secured. Harlan and his men had been detained for questioning by relevant authorities, as Wesley cryptically explained. Audrey didn't press for details, understanding some things were better left in the gray areas between legal and necessary. Burke returned with Jeremy that afternoon, the baby squealing with delight at seeing his mother. As Audrey clutched her son, breathing in his familiar scent, she caught Wesley watching them with naked longing, not just for her, but for the connection they represented, the family he'd lost and never rebuilt. What happens now? Audrey asked later as they sat on the cliffside terrace, Jeremy napping peacefully between them. The question encompassed everything: his business, their safety, the undefined relationship that had developed amid crisis and revelation. Can you ever really leave that world behind? Wesley's gaze remained on the horizon, where sea met sky in an endless blue expanse. The transition was already 90% complete. After today, accelerating the timeline becomes necessary. He turned to face her fully. I've been preparing to walk away for 3 years. Meeting you and Jeremy just gave me a reason to finalize it. And Harlan? Audrey couldn't help asking, needing to understand the dangers that might still lurk in their future. Wesley's expression hardened briefly before settling into something more resolved. Facing federal charges based on evidence I've been gathering. His associates are making similar arrangements as we speak. The weight of uncertainty that had pressed on Audrey since that first accidental email finally began to lift. So Jeremy's medical care, my job at the hospital, those weren't just elaborate schemes to manipulate me. The question held no accusation, merely a need for clarity as they stood at this crossroads. The manipulations were there, Wesley admitted, honesty between them now as natural as breathing. But not in the way you think. I arranged opportunities, yes, but your capabilities earned everything else. The hospital administrator sings your praises weekly. You've transformed the family support program. Audrey absorbed this, appreciating his candor even when it wasn't flattering. And us? Whatever this is between us, was that calculated too? She gestured to the space between them, this undefined connection that had survived threats both external and self-imposed. Another strategic investment? The Ethan Porter Wing's construction had already begun, architectural plans showing expansive glass walls designed to eliminate the claustrophobic feel of traditional hospital settings. Wesley had insisted on natural light flooding every treatment room, a direct response to his brother's final days spent in sterile fluorescent spaces devoid of warmth or comfort. Jeremy's medical team expanded to include specialists recruited from across the country, their expertise focusing on preventative care rather than merely treating symptoms. The innovative approach Wesley funded challenged traditional pediatric respiratory protocols, with Jeremy's improving condition becoming an unofficial case study for methods that would eventually benefit thousands of children. Audrey's apartment lease had quietly expired during the Marblehead confrontation, her few cherished possessions now stored in Wesley's guest house, while they navigated the uncharted territory between professional arrangement and personal attachment. Neither rushed to define what was developing between them, both understanding that foundations built too quickly often failed to support what followed. A genuine smile transformed Wesley's face, erasing years of practiced coldness. That was my greatest miscalculation. I intended to help from a distance, professional assistance only. I never planned on game nights with a 6-month-old, or hospital cafeteria coffee that tastes like cardboard, or finding myself parked outside your apartment during thunderstorms, because they remind you of the night you lost Ethan, Audrey finished softly, the pieces of his carefully guarded past finally forming a complete picture. Wesley nodded, vulnerability no longer hidden behind walls of control and power. I thought I was protecting Jeremy. I didn't realize I was also healing myself. 2 weeks later, Boston Children's Hospital announced an unprecedented donation establishing the Ethan Porter Wing for respiratory disorders, with state-of-the-art facilities available regardless of patients' insurance status. The press release listed Wesley Porter as the primary benefactor, his company now fully divested from its shadowy origins. Audrey watched from the audience as Wesley delivered a brief, powerful speech about second chances and unexpected paths. Jeremy babbled happily in her lap, healthy and thriving thanks to a mistaken email that had connected them to the most unlikely ally. Sometimes, she realized, our biggest mistakes lead us exactly where we need to go. The journey from that desperate night when she'd accidentally sent her son's prescription to a feared Mafia boss had been neither simple nor safe. But as Wesley stepped down from the podium, his eyes finding hers with a warmth once thought impossible, Audrey knew with absolute certainty that some mistakes were truly worth making. Thank you all for following this story. If you're enjoying it, write in the comments where you're watching from. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video, because your support is important for me to continue creating content here.